Hello and welcome to ATP Insights, where we cover the tech news that matters most to Asia and in Asia. Today is Monday, the 9th of March, 2026. Let's get right to it. We're going to cover four things overall: why Southeast Asia's e-commerce war could be becoming an AI war. And then we're going to be joined by three guests to look at the impact of artificial intelligence on three distinct verticals. We're going to start by welcoming Joel Lee, the CEO and founder at Protos Labs, to explore how autonomous AI is reshaping threat intelligence and cyber risk analytics. We'll follow that with Anirudh Narayan, a co-founder and CGO at Lyzr.AI, that's Lyzr.AI, to dig into an AI agent infrastructure for regulated industries like banking and insurance. And then finally, we'll welcome Dennis Yap, the founder of AI Seer, to discuss truth verification and AI authentication, especially as AI-generated content becomes harder to distinguish. Okay, let's talk about Shopee versus TikTok Shop, why Southeast Asia's e-commerce war is becoming an AI war. And I just want to say this at the beginning. I'm going to use the word "C" a lot, and it may be a little bit confusing because it's the new-ish name. It's not really that new for a company that used to be called Garena, which was the gaming company, which then decided it wanted to launch what is now one of the largest, if not the largest, e-commerce companies in Southeast Asia, and they changed their company name to SEA. Don't ask me why. It's confusing to me, and I think it's confusing to everybody who has to discuss it, but it is what it is. And if you hear me say C, that's probably what I am discussing or talking about. Okay, what matters in Southeast Asia right now is not simply who is selling more shampoo, sneakers, or phone cases online. This is not what's determining who's winning or who's losing in the e-commerce battle here. The real story is that the region's most important commercial battle is changing shape, and it's changing shape right in front of our eyes. For years, e-commerce competition in Southeast Asia was understood through a very familiar lens: discounts, free shipping, payments integration, last minute logistics, events like 11/11, like 3/3, like 12/12. You've seen all of this stuff. But the latest developments around see, there it is again. Garena, I mean, you can't even call it that anymore, but that's what it is. Shopee, TikTok Shop, and Google suggest that this is no longer enough. The old way is just not working anymore. The contest is becoming a fight over who controls discovery, influence, and ultimately the interface through which people decide to buy. And this battle is actually starting to get really interesting. And this matters because Southeast Asia is the ideal proving ground for what could potentially be the next phase of commerce online. This is a region where shopping is already social, mobile first, very video heavy, and deeply shaped by content creators. And I know this because I see in my friend group, people are there for entertainment. They're on TikTok, they're on whatever platform they're on. They're scrolling, and then they see something they like and they wonder, can I buy it right here? And they can. And I've watched them do it actually. So when Reuters reports on one hand that Sea's shares fell sharply after rising expenses and a slower Shopee GMV growth outlook, with TikTok Shop explicitly cited as a competitive pressure point, and on the other hand that Google and Sea, there's that company name again I was talking about, are now partnering on AI tools, including an agentic shopping prototype for Shopee, those are not separate stories. They're the same story viewed from two different time horizons and two different time lenses, to be fair. The short-term story is margin pressure. The longer-term story is interface change. Sea's latest results were, on the surface, not a disaster. Reuters reported quarterly revenue of $6.85 billion, above analysts' expectations of about $6.45. But investors focused on what it cost to defend Shopee's position. Operating expenses in the fourth quarter rose more than 28% to $2.43 billion. Shopee's marketing expenses rose sharply, and Sea guided to around 25% GMV growth for 2026, down a smidge from 26.8% growth in 2025. In other words, the market heard a very specific message. Yeah, Shopee's still growing, but growth is becoming more expensive, and e-commerce leadership, which is what Shopee has, is no longer cheap to maintain. And that expense surge that I just talked about is not random. It's not random at all, actually. Reuters tied it directly to the need to fend off competition from TikTok Shop, with SEA investing, I did it again, with C investing in discounts, logistics, and delivery to protect its market share. And that is the old e-commerce playbook under pressure. Discount more, discount harder, spend more on customer acquisition, improve fulfillment, make sure your logistics are better, and protect conversions as well. Make sure that when people are on your site, they show some intent, they buy a product from one of your shops, right? It still works, but only up to a point. But it's also exactly the kind of strategy that becomes less attractive when a rival is changing not just prices, but behavior. When discounts alone don't just work, but when the overall way people are discovering the products that they want to buy is actually changing. Because TikTok Shop's real threat to Shopee is not simply that it's another marketplace. We have another one of those. We have Lyzr. We'll get to that in a bit as well. But the real threat here is that it compresses the distance between entertainment and transaction. This is what I was talking about earlier in my friend group. You see it all the time. People are online nominally to be entertained when they're on TikTok, but then they see something they want to buy. They see some creator created a video about some shoes or some bags or whatever it is, and then they click on it to buy. So on a classic e-commerce platform, the consumer has intent first and then searches. I want to buy some sneaks. I want to buy, a cap. I want to buy a t-shirt. Let me go search for who's going to make it. But on TikTok Shop, intent can be manufactured. Mid-scroll, I've seen this happen too. You're sitting next to somebody, you see them scrolling, and you see them stop and think, I want to buy that. And you're like, are you shopping or are you being entertained? Which one is it? Discovery on a platform like that ends up being native to the product experience. And commerce is no longer a destination. It's a byproduct of the attention you're already spending, right? And that is a structurally very, very different model. And it's particularly potent in Southeast Asia, where mobile video consumption and creator-led purchasing behavior are already mainstream. Reuters noted as early as 2024 that TikTok Shop had become Southeast Asia's second largest e-commerce platform after Shopee, reaching $16.3 billion in regional GMV in 23, and that momentum has only continued and most likely accelerated. The regional numbers now look even more serious. Reuters reported that Shopee held 52% of Southeast Asia's e-commerce market in 2024, which still makes it the clear incumbent. It makes it the biggest, right? But newer market data widely cited across the region suggests that TikTok Shop's Southeast Asia GMV roughly doubled to $45.6 billion, with Southeast Asia remaining its core growth engine. In Vietnam, the gap has narrowed dramatically, with one recent market report showing TikTok Shop above 41% share, while Shopee remained above 56%. It feels far away, but again, even where Shopee remains ahead, the directional part of this, the direction of the market share move is unmistakable, right? It's not a one-way street, but it kind of feels like it is at some level. TikTok is not merely participating in e-commerce. It's redefining how e-commerce demand is captured and how purchases are actually taking place. Indonesia is the clearest example of how serious ByteDance is about this market. ByteDance, the owner of TikTok, yeah? After the Indonesian government banned direct e-commerce transactions on social media platforms, TikTok responded not by saying, oh, shucks, we can't do this anymore, not by retreating, but just restructuring the way that they embedded their e-commerce stuff into other platforms. Reuters again reported that TikTok agreed to buy a little bit more than a 75% stake in Tokopedia, allowing it to restart and re-embed its commerce ambitions inside the region's largest economy through an approved local structure. They didn't give up. They just said, how can we do this? And they figured out a way to do it by, again, making themselves part of the local infrastructure. Super important stuff. It was a declaration that Southeast Asia, and especially Indonesia, as the largest market here, is too big to lose. So if you are SEA, right, you are facing a rival that is not just discounting aggressively. That would be way easier to deal with at some point, right? But one that sits upstream of the shopping journey itself. TikTok owns the feed. There really is no Shopee feed per se, not that I know of. They own the creator relationship, the recommendation loop, and the emotional context in which impulse purchases happen. Again, I've seen this in my friend group. When you watch somebody just scrolling through TikTok, they're just minding their own business and boom, emotionally they see something they want to buy it. And because the the abstraction away from the seller is removed. They're right there. They hit something, they go somewhere, they can buy it right away. And it's because all of their details are already available. And maybe they actually know the seller as well. That product can show up in an hour, depending on where it's coming from. It could show up in a day. And Shopee, by contrast, historically won by doing what? By building trust, by scaling properly, logistics density, and merchant infrastructure. And that is why the Google SEA partnership or C partnership is so important. It suggests that C understands that defending a marketplace is no longer sufficient. It has to reinvent the shopping experience itself. And for my money, I feel like they may go about this the wrong way. But let's dig a little bit deeper. Reuters reported in February that Google and SEA would develop AI tools for e-commerce and gaming and specifically explore AI-powered agentic shopping prototype for Shopee. And those words matter. Agentic shopping implies that the platform is not just showing listings more intelligently. Shopee appears to be preparing for a world in which the winning commerce experience is not just a better storefront, but a better shopping assistant. I don't know. I'd love to know what you think about this. Is it better to have agentic AI being a shopping assistant for you, or just having a much closer relationship and a much more emotional relationship with what's happening in your feed on TikTok? I'd love to know your feedback on this one. And while this is a real profound shift for Shopee, right, because the old e-commerce stack was built around traffic acquisition, search ranking, seller tools, payments, and delivery, just really basic stuff that we've been doing for 2.5 decades. This new stack adds something else on top, an intelligence layer. And once that intelligence layer becomes good enough, the platform that best understands the consumer's kind of vague, messy, unstructured intent may have the advantage over the platform with the most listings or the lowest subsidy. I've said this so many times. Discovery is the biggest problem for any business, and the more products you have is not necessarily better for a consumer experience. Maybe fewer products. I don't need to have 17 different colors. Maybe I just want 5, right? I don't need to have 17 different sizes either. Maybe I just want 5. And I think this is the reason why the Shopee TikTok battle is becoming so consequential, because it really may determine whether Southeast Asia's e-commerce future is feed first, search first, or agent first. And I'm going to come down on the side of feed first. Unless something dramatically happens in the regulatory environment around what that feed can actually be, I just see that having more power. Yeah, definitely. There is also a larger strategic irony here for me. For years, Southeast Asia was seen as a market where execution mattered more than invention, right? Just copy whatever Amazon does. Seemed to be the mantra out here. Logistics, localization, payments, trust, and affordability, those were the hard parts. AI could rebalance this equation, but if product discovery, personalization, and conversion increasingly depend on large-scale model capabilities, then regional champions may need deeper alliances with global infrastructure players. Seer's partnership with Google kind of fits that logic. They're going, well, we can't build our own artificial intelligence and agentic AI infrastructure, but maybe Google can help us do this. It's not just the product announcement. It's a signal to the market that the next phase of regional commerce may require a fusion of local distribution and global AI infrastructure. So I think that's incontrovertible, right? Because these big companies are not going to go to DeepSeek. They're just not going to do that. And there's no individual company in Asia or in general or in Southeast Asia in particular that's built a big enough model or a powerful enough model to actually have any sort of help in this agentic AI space. So the bottom line is that if a company like Shopee wants to have some help in the agentic AI space, they're going to have to go to a global player. And in this case, they've chosen to partner, or at least try to partner with Google. And let's note as well that none of this stuff happens in a vacuum. None of it, right? There's always this little butterfly effect. And Reuters explicitly framed the Google SEA tie-up as part of a broader AI race in commerce, pointing out that it came in the wake of Alibaba's launch of a new AI model for Lazada. So there's Lazada popping in. And for years, you have to know, Lazada was the dominant incumbent player. And when it was purchased by Alibaba a while ago, there was real concern that it was just going to continue to dominate. And then Shopee came out of nowhere and just destroyed stuff, right? In other words, the region's 3 major e-commerce poles now each represent a different strategic architecture. Shopee is pairing local scale with Google's AI stack. TikTok Shop brings algorithmic media, creator commerce, and ByteDance recommendation power, all really powerful stuff. And Lazada may be the most old-fashioned one here. It sits inside the Alibaba universe, where commerce and AI are also converging rapidly, but there's no longer a regional knife fight over coupons. This is not what's happening. Discounting used to be the way that companies would get you to come to their site. Again, 11, 11, 12, 12, 10, 10, 3, 3. It just started happening every month. It's a contest between different models of how digital commerce should, could, and will work. For consumers, right, which is the lens through which I like to look at this stuff a lot, this could make shopping feel easier, faster, and more personalized. On the one hand, better AI tools may improve matching, advertising efficiency, customer service, and conversion. But on the other hand, sellers may become even more dependent on opaque platform systems that determine visibility, ranking, pricing pressure, and promotional viability. And this is why I think the feed is going to have more power than search and the platforms and agentic kind of assistance. In a more agentic commerce environment, the question for a merchant becomes much, much sharper. Are you building a brand that consumers seek out? Or are you simply inventory inside somebody else's intelligent interface? And that's a problem. And that distinction becomes existential when the interface itself starts doing more of the thinking. For Southeast Asia as a region, this may be the most important point of all. The future of commerce here is likely to be decided, as I said earlier, not by who copied Amazon the best, which was what was happening prior, right? But by who best understood Southeast Asia itself. What do people in Southeast Asia really want, right? That's going to be the big question. This is a region where trust and kind of everything else is fragmented. Languages are all over the map. Discovery is definitely social. And shopping is already deeply entangled with creators, live streams, chat, and mobile payments in a way that still has not happened in the West. Just not yet. And that means Southeast Asia may actually be one of the first places where AI native commerce becomes real at scale. Because consumer behavior here was already moving in that direction before these LLMs got smarter. So the cleanest way to understand the Shopee versus TikTok Shop story is this. Yesterday's war was about who could subsidize the cart, right? Who could give the most discounts. Today's war is about who owns discovery. Seer's falling share price in the stock market tells you that the old war is getting way more expensive, and the fact that their expenses went up a lot too as well tells you the same thing. Its partnership with Google tells you management knows the next war will definitely look different than the previous one. It always does. If you're fighting the previous war, you've already lost. This is true in any vertical. And TikTok Shop's rise tells you that in Southeast Asia, commerce is no longer just an exercise in catalog management and parcel delivery, right? It's no longer just having the best logistics and customer experience. It is becoming a battle over attention, intention, and machine-assisted decision-making. That is why this is the region's most important commercial story. Not because Shopee is losing, not because TikTok Shop is winning per se, but because Southeast Asia is showing in real time what the next version of online commerce may look like for the rest of the world. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to welcome our guests into the show. We'll be right back. Okay, we'd like to welcome Joel Lee, CEO and founder of Protos Labs, onto the show. We want to talk about how to explore autonomous AI and how it's reshaping threat intelligence and cyber risk analytics. But before we do that, Joel, just give us a little bit about Protos Labs before we start. Thank you.
Yep, sure. Yeah, thanks, Michael, for the opportunity to
Thank
be
you.
here. So just introducing the company. So Protos Labs, we are a cybersecurity AI company. We sit at the intersection of both of these domains of cyber and AI. And specifically, we build AI agents for cybersecurity. Now, not any domain within cybersecurity or as a broad level, but specifically a domain within cyber called cyber threat intelligence, right? Which has got to do with how we understand what adversaries are doing, modeling that behavior, distilling it, analyzing it, such that you can proactively inform your organization's defensive strategy before you actually get breached. Yeah. In essence, that's what we do. So we sell primarily to large enterprises globally. So we don't do small, medium business. We are definitely not B2C. We are a product company.
Right.
We sell the AI software to quite sizable enterprises, the likes of the Fortune 5,000 customers. Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so let's just jump right into this. Great explanation, by the way, for what Protos Labs does. And to be fair, we spent a lot of time ourselves actually thinking about and having people on the show that talk about threat intelligence and cyber threat stuff. The stuff that's going on out there, and I want you to address some of this too, is actually getting a little bit nutty. How do you think agentic AI is changing cyber threat intelligence and risk management for enterprises? And maybe you can talk a little bit about how this is a two-way street, if you don't mind, in the sense that the agentic AI is not just using for defense, but it's also possibly be using for offense as well. Maybe you can just address both sides of that, if you don't mind.
Yep, sure. So exactly as you mentioned, Michael, what we see today is that once upon a time, cyber attacks were typically operated by a human being, right? So whether it be a cyber criminal or some level of activist or a nation state actor thinking that he's acting in the interest of his country, conducting an attack. Today, with the advent of cyber tools, some of that is hybrid, meaning to say partially operated by a human being, but also partially automated by AI. There are some people who claim that that will one day be fully autonomous, meaning to say that AI can conduct an attack on your behalf
Wow.
and sort of lower the barriers to entry for even maybe, let's say, a high school student to be able to conduct an attack. So that's one big trend that we see. The second big trend that we do see is if there's going to be an increase in the number of attacks, you need actually more defenders then to be able to deal with these attackers, right?
Yeah.
But globally, there's also that shortage of cybersecurity analysts that you can hire, right? I mean, the schools can't produce enough of that, and so on and so forth.
Can I ask you this though? There is this image, I think, that people still have, and maybe you can go against this image a little bit about how somebody in, like a high schooler in the basement of their mom's house, can actually go out and create all this stuff that creates cyber attacks. But are we in a situation now? And again, I had who was it, David Agronovich on, right? Who's the global head of threat reduction at Meta or at Facebook, and he was talking to me about like there are actually factories and warehouses where massive server farms are being created to just use not just artificial intelligence, but kind of any other tools that are out there as well, in the sense that we're no longer dealing with just, some dude or some gal in his mom's basement, but just like very organized and very kind of highly sophisticated attackers. And they're probably using agentic AI as well, yeah?
Yeah, so there are two sides to that, right? So one
Yeah.
is how can AI possibly shorten the attack life cycle? And that's already happening. So I don't think that there are many attacks today that are fully autonomously operated
Fair
by
enough.
an AI itself. But definitely, when you want to conduct an attack, right, it's a bit like sort of like breaking into a house, right? I mean, if you were going to break into a big house, right, you're not going to do it overnight, right? You will do some level of reconnaissance,
Yeah,
research, look at
yeah.
the weak points when people are coming home. All these types of activities in the earlier part of what they call a cyber kill chain could now actually be automated by AI. So you're significantly reducing the time needed to be able to conduct an attack. Of course, not yet fully automatic in that sense, but definitely shortening the time compression cycle.
So here's the thing I want to know though, right? And I talk about this a lot when I talk about robberies. I've used the same analogy, so I love the fact that you've mentioned this. Yeah, someone's going to stake out your house. They actually may be staking out the entire neighborhood, right? And at some level, it's harder to break into a house than it could be to break into a big company through a cyber attack, right? Because I can attack 1,000 companies at once, and I can really only break into one house at once. But if someone is staking out doing reconnaissance on my home, I may notice them, my kids may notice them, my neighbors may notice them. Are you suggesting as well that like Protos is building tools, or that there are tools out there to see if somebody is, and I'm putting it in quotes, is staking out your house electronically or digitally so you can be better
Yep.
prepared for their cyber attack?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that we do. So I think
Perfect.
from a fingerprinting point of view, right, to know whether there are signals of people potentially staking out your house, there will be certain types of activities, right? This guy keeps walking around the same
Right.
place, or they keep trying to scan
He's
something,
wearing a
or
hat
they
or
keep trying.
something.
Yeah, exactly right. So there are some signals in even the digital landscape where obviously you look at logs and different telemetry to be able to identify that. But again, if you think about that, if more people trying to knock on your house door, stand outside your house gate, it means that you need basically more human beings to be able to have eyeballs to look at that data points,
Right.
right? But if today you're only a three-man team, how much data can you possibly look at? Just humanly possible.
Just so interesting. Can we just switch gears a little bit as well? So one of the biggest shows we used to do was on insurance. So we've spoken to, and we still actually do a bunch of insurance shows as well. I think I've spoken to every relevant or important insurtech company in Southeast Asia, and a bunch of them in Europe and in the United States as well. And at the beginning, they were skeptical of artificial intelligence, to be fair, kind of across the board. But what role do you think autonomous AI will play in cyber insurance over the next few years? And again, we've spoken to some of like the biggest cyber insurance players too. I'm just curious what your take is on this.
Yeah, so cyber insurance was a business line we had explored quite actively about 2 years ago. I think we were one of the first few stage companies to ever work with the Lloyd's of London out of Singapore.
Uh-huh.
We no longer do that too much today, but we do have a subsidiary that operates an insurance agency license. So maybe just speaking a bit to the problem. So I think if you look at cyber insurance, in order to submit an application or to be able to buy cyber insurance, what typically happens, right? So the first is you need to fill in some kind of proposal form, right? So in this case, the proposal form is a technical set of questions, right? Do you have multi-factor authentication? Do you have backup and what have you? The next question that you ask yourself then is when you want to underwrite that risk, how do you determine what is true versus what is not? Right. And not to say that people are maliciously or intentionally lying to you on the proposal form. It's just that sometimes they don't even know
Right,
their own
right,
estate,
right.
right? Yeah. So, and if you think about that, there's a whole bunch of paper-based forms that you have to fill in. There potentially could be some technical tools that you may then have to bring in into the underwriter's repertoire of skills and tool set to be able to do some scanning or what have you, and then to be able to price that risk, right?
Yeah.
So three different elements of that, right? Again, it's a data play, right? So how then do you bring in proposal forms that are in PDF format? How do you bring in technical scans that may come from some tool somewhere through API or MCP integration? And then how then do you price that through your actual science pricing tables, which is Excel spreadsheet or some financial models and all of that.
Let's hope it's
So
not just an Excel spreadsheet anymore, but yeah, fair enough.
yeah, so it's crazy, right? So I mean, the AI could now fuse all of their data sets together to be able to come up with something that makes sense
Yeah.
just using all these different data points.
Um, so where do you think this is going to go though, right? And the reason why I ask this is because do you think as AI, and particularly agentic AI, becomes more prominent that, and I don't want to get the CISOs yet, but how much do you feel like when you're talking to some of these large institutions that they get a sense that there's been a sea change in what they need to do from a cybersecurity threat standpoint, just because of the new power that AI has been unleashed just over the last like 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, so there are two ways that enterprise think about AI. One is AI to augment existing tools, right, to be able to maybe detect a needle in a haystack type conversation.
Yep.
The other, when it comes to AI agents, is then a little bit different. I mean, the former would be more AI ML, but when it comes to AI agents, that has changed, right? So, for example, AI agents play more at the human layer, right? So when we say globally, the World Economic Forum mentions that there's 4 million unfilled cybersecurity roles, meaning to say there's not enough of that talent. Even if you can pay, doesn't mean you can find them, right? So then how then do you augment your human analysts with AI agents to be able to be that army of whether it be intelligence collectors, analysts, whatever it might be, so that you can actually meet up with the growing number of cyber attacks. Yeah. So I think there's two different types of ways that AI has played out. So one is enhancing existing threat detection. The other is really augmenting the human being to be able to deal with this whole gamut of data that you're looking at. And you're not just looking at data from your own enterprise, right? Forgot to mention, you may be looking at data from your vendors, right? Who may pose a risk to you,
Right.
actually. You may be super secure, but they may not be, right? And that's more often than not the modus operandi of today's attackers, actually.
So this is actually a really good point, and this is a conversation that I've had with some other people in the cybersecurity space as well. And I think David, like I said, David Agronovich actually mentioned this too when he was talking to me a few months ago. If I'm only worried about my house, right? Let's go back to use the house analogy. If I'm only worried about my house, it's not easy to protect, but relatively easier to protect because I know where all the windows are, like I know where all the doors are, I know how the garage is connected, and if someone can get into the garage, maybe they can get in through like that back door as well. But once I'm connected to third parties, right?
Mm.
And I mean, every company is connected to some other third party, right? Like that's just the nature of the way business works today. Where does agentic AI come into protecting me against what they're doing? Do you know what I mean? Like, what kind of partnership do I have to have with them? What kind of agreement do I have to have with them so that even if they're not ready, I know I can be ready? Do you know what I mean? Because
Yep.
if my neighbor's house is somehow underground connected to my house, and I know that because I've given them access to it, I still want to know they're not letting intruders into their building and then they're coming into mine, kind of thing.
Yeah, so on a very simplistic level, there are two ways that organizations do this, right? So firstly is from a legal contracting point of view, right? How do I mandate that they follow certain baseline set of controls,
Yep.
that aligns to, like sort of my posture. Of course, they will never be as good as you, but you can have a baseline set of controls, right? But today, I think the problem has exacerbated because even with that, what's the consequence? You have to sue them, right? But the truth of the matter is something would already have happened and your reputation would have taken a hit and so on and so forth, right? So today there are larger organizations that we work with that have started to become more proactive in this sense. So they say, we have come to a point where we realize that our vendors will never be able to protect themselves. How then can we protect them actually, right? Proactively, right? Whether
Right.
it be to monitor threats on their behalf, to analyze potentially people trying to target them and so on and so forth. So that if I'm helping them to help myself actually. Yeah. And that really then leads to, okay, now, so you have a whole bunch of things that you have to keep track in-house, but now you have to keep track of these guys that are connected to you, right? And you also have this thing called end party risk, right? So third party is one level, the end party could be fourth and fifth party
Yeah.
risk,
Yeah.
right?
Because they're
So
also connected. Your third parties are
exactly.
also connected to other parties. You could have no idea who they are, right?
Yes. So the AI agents then we have some customers who specially deploy AI agents to look at vendors in Europe, for example, and there can be maybe 5,000, 7,000 of them. And specifically, so these AI agents help to be able to do that kind of analysis and then to be able to proactively push out early warning alerts to some of these vendors. Yeah.
So one more thing, maybe, and let's see where we go, but then maybe I'll let you go after this. But you mentioned this idea of insurance. We talked about it a little bit. Where does the liability live in some cases where the world and the businesses are so interconnected? Do you know what I mean? So even if you do have properly filled out all the forms you talked about, and even if no one is obfuscating and you have some event, how do you figure out where the liability lies, in particular if it's an agentic attack on you? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I think in the insurance standpoint, they probably a bit less. They haven't got to that point.
Yeah, so they don't know. So
Less,
the answer is
yeah,
they don't know yet, right? Is that a fair
yeah,
answer?
yeah. I would say so. I mean, in the world of insurance, there are two concepts of first party liability and third party liability, right?
Yep, yep.
So third party is basically people doing stuff to you, and then you're incurring some level of that cost. I think when it comes to AI causing an attack, typically I think the insurance policies dictate that as long as it's caused by a cyber event, that would be covered. But they haven't gone down into realms of whether it be caused by an AI, conducting the attack and whatsoever.
Yep.
So that's something that's probably quite new in the insurance industry. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Look, I'm going to let you go. I'm sorry about the small technical problem that we had. This was really great. We hope you'll come back as well. And again, thank you just so much for coming and doing this today. We really appreciate your time. Joel Lee, the
Yeah, no
CEO
problem.
and founder of Protos Labs. Awesome.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so
man.
much, Michael.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you.
Okay, welcome back to the show. We're going to welcome Anirudh Narayan, a co-founder and the chief growth officer, the CGO at Lyzr.AI, into the show. Let's bring him in. Anirudh, can you hear me?
Hey, I can hear you. How are you?
I am doing great. Thank you for coming and doing this. Well, I just want to welcome everybody back to the show. I want to dig into AI agent infrastructure for regulated industries with Anirudh Narayan, a co-founder and the CGO. Do I have it right? Lyzr.ai?
Yeah, Lyzr, like the word analyzer.
Got it. I like it. That's why. Okay. Do you want to tell us, before we jump into like the main topics, do you want to tell us a little bit about Lyzr.ai?
Yeah, so actually, this was started by Shiva in 2023 August.
Okay.
Well, we were initially a data analyzer platform, hence the word Lyzr, and then we pivoted into a full stack agent infrastructure platform because we realized it's really difficult to build agents using LangChain. So we built a low code version, and we decided, what if we could enable enterprises to not just build agents but also deploy them into production? So Lyzr's model today is a lot like Palantir in some sense. We give you the platform, we deploy forward deployment engineers, and then we work with them to take agents to production.
That's awesome. I love the way you pivoted in the middle. You're like, wait a second. This is a
Yeah.
big deal, but this is a little bit of a bigger deal. Let's go over there and do that thing. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just jump right into this now. How are enterprises approaching this shift from like a single AI tool, right? So again, time is like such a flat circle for me. I can never remember if like OpenAI released ChatGPT in 2022 or 2023 anymore, but let's just call it 2022. I don't know. Maybe I'm right. Maybe I'm wrong. But in the
November
old days, which is weird because it's only like 2 or 3 years ago, you just had this one tool. It kind of sat there with you. You could ask it questions and give it answers. But how about this shift now from not just one tool, but this idea of having multi-agent systems? How are enterprises approaching this shift?
Yeah. So I think there are two, three parts to this, which I think is important. So one is with just all the news, right? Like uh, Anthropic came out, they got banned by Trump in terms of the defense systems. So enterprise are like, hey, we don't want to be locked into one tool or one ecosystem. I think that's one part of it. There's also information around. I think Jason Calacanis came out and said, hey, you can't trust OpenAI. They're going to most probably use your data to train and then build similar products. So that's one side of it. There's a sense of caution where we don't want to be locked into one ecosystem. We want to build our own ecosystem. We want to build our own models, and we want to fully own it end to end. So we want to be sovereign in that sense. Uh, Second is because there's so much sensitive data that's involved. A lot of these enterprises want to start with use cases that are internal.
Yeah, yeah,
And also maybe even with banks, it might be like, hey, we'll start with sales, marketing, HR, customer support, internal, and then start moving into more complex use cases, which actually involves, let's say, financial data.
yeah. Look, I've done full episodes on. I wouldn't say comparing ChatGPT or OpenAI to Anthropic to Perplexity, and just like this idea of, switching costs are relatively low. But I don't talk about single point of failure. I talk about this thing I've kind of made up called single point of influence, right? And in the sense that if SoftBank and Nvidia and Amazon are the biggest investors into OpenAI, right? They just put $110 billion into it. Well, then maybe they're the single point of influence, and that OpenAI isn't actually the single point of failure. But you mentioned this idea that like nobody wants to be locked into one specific system without talking about the politics of it, right? Because I
Sure.
think it's kind of less relevant. But is there a way to build a multi-agent environment where some of it is coming from OpenAI, some of it is coming from Anthropic, and some of it is coming do those guys play well together? If that makes sense, so that internally I can
Yeah.
say, yeah, I'm not locked into this. And if one of these guys either does something that I don't like or it just goes down, because remember,
Yeah.
Anthropic went down, right?
Yeah.
Last week. How does that work?
Yeah. No, I think that's a fair point, Michael. So as much as there's a political angle to this, these models are fantastic,
Yeah,
right? And
super.
they right. So, and then they're great for specific use cases. So when you're building multi-agent systems, you can use an infrastructure platform like Lyzr or any platform out there, and each agent can be almost like an independent unit that you can pick a specific model for that agent. So, like for example, for research, you might want to use Perplexity or Claude's latest model, right?
Yep.
Like even ChatGPT's latest models are great for reasoning and content creation. Uh, we use Flash 2.5 for video. So, like, it depends a lot on the workflow. If I'm doing a marketing workflow, where let's say it is, hey, there's research that I have to do of my competitors, and then post that, convert that into a deck. It might be something like I want to use Perplexity in the first agent, and then there may be a repurposing reasoning agent that I use as OpenAI. So, and you can build these out end to end. And most of these systems are set up in a way where, oh, if I have Lyzr agents, I should be able to connect to other agents also,
Yeah.
right? So I think it's coming down to for what use case, which model is most appropriate. That's one aspect of it, and the second one is obviously like where does the data sit, and what are the tooling integrations associated with that workflow.
So this is the question then, right? How hard is it for some of these big enterprises to actually integrate AI agents into them? And one of the things I said at the top of this segment was in a regulated industry, right? So if you look at banks, or trading houses or M&A houses, right, or insurance companies, they're dealing with like second order level of restrictions on what they can and can't do. So what are some of the biggest challenges in these environments? And again, we've done so much work in the insurance space, and just getting those guys and gals to roll this stuff out at all had been hard, right? What
Yeah.
are you seeing here? What are the challenges for deployment?
So you'd be surprised. So I think most of these enterprise, first of all, would have would be associated with the AWS, Azure, or the Salesforce ecosystem. So they all have agent builders. So they first use those platforms to build agents. So like getting agents off the ground for them actually is not challenging, because why my data is within the infrastructure. I can deploy it within a VPC. I can do it on-prem. All of that's kind of available.
Yeah.
Where they run into issues actually is when you start doing complex workflows. It's like do I need an agentic consultant? Do I need someone to put this piece end to end, given that I have a legacy system and I have to do something custom, right? So I think the workflow part is the easy part. Sometimes the data is extremely fragmented, so that's maybe a challenge. But I would say, with especially with banks, like they're still moving pretty slowly in terms of the agent production piece. Uh, like if you talk to a European bank, they're like, "Hey, we need to have the data and the service to sit within Europe,
Right.
right?"
Yeah.
So I think we're at a time right now where you just can't give them an agent builder and be like, "Hey, just build it on your own." I think it's coming down to like almost a strong deployment delivery layer to work with them for almost a year to, like, let's say, do 3-4 deployments.
Yeah. So this is the question I was going to ask you next: is there enough internal knowledge? And even in a year, like I don't disagree with you. Do you mind if I just digress a little bit?
Sure.
Whenever we roll out new technologies, no matter what it is, and I always go back like to electricity and to cars and stuff like that. But let's just fast forward to today with artificial intelligence and agentic AI. There's always this fear in the media of like, oh, everyone's going to lose their job and everyone's going to, we're going to have like 25% unemployment, everyone's going to die. And the thing that I always say is I've seen so many of these technical cycles and tech cycles that you've just made up a brand new job. Like a tech guy and gal that comes into your company and then they do the writing for you for this agentic AI because internally there's not enough institutional knowledge for how to build it. So that's just one thing. But how long do you think it takes to build up this institutional knowledge, right? Because you're right. I think if I go into some of the biggest companies, even some of the companies where I used to work, nobody internally is going to know how to properly build and test and make sure that the output that they're getting is correct. And you're right as well. The way their data is organized internally may not even be ready for this. And I think it's going to take somebody external to come in and do this. Yeah.
Yeah. No, the reason why you need sometimes someone external is like this is our job,
Yeah.
right? Like if guys are like 24/7 is we're spending time building agents, doing this for customers. So for someone, let's say in an enterprise, like what we have seen is sometimes we don't have a dedicated champion.
Yeah.
The institutional knowledge is not there because they have fragmented responsibilities. They have to own business outcomes. It's like they will build out the agent builder, but like from a capability standpoint, it may not be super deep, right? So we've seen that with Accenture. Accenture has a refinery. There's Foundry. They all are actually good platforms, but like we are maybe spending, let's say, day and night, like making sure, oh, there's traceability, there's observability, there is agent simulation, right? So I think that's one side of it. So there's always been consultants. I don't think that will change. So there'll always be a need for someone to come in and tell us or tell people what, at least give them guidance at a high level.
Yeah.
But I think the second angle also today is, I think you brought up the jobs part of it, Michael. I think like jobs being created and formalized is not moving as quickly as jobs being displaced. So a lot of people still don't know the name of the job that's being created, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think there's something else that you brought up on the...
Just how long do you think it's going to take to get this institutional knowledge in place so that these companies, right? Because over time, look, you just mentioned this idea that the job losses could accelerate faster than the job gains is very possible, right? There's always this mismatch, right? Because there's a skill mismatch as well. There simply may not be enough people who understand how this stuff works. And to be fair, we're in the early innings of this as well, right? So we just may not know like what we need and what we don't need. But over time, those people are going to become the experts, and they may come out of the existing consulting companies or new consulting companies as well. But over time, those things are going to catch up, yeah?
Yeah, I think within a year, I'm actually pretty bullish that within a year, enterprises will have the knowledge and be like, hey, we don't need your delivery services anymore. I hope your platform is good enough to help us get to the next level. So, because just to give you context, right, we end up working with a lot of these global system integrators, let's say like a Persistent, First Source,
Sure.
KPMG. Like these players are like, you gave us a platform, train our team, work with us for 3 to 6 months to actually help build agents out. And then slowly you're hoping like month 9, they're like, hey, here's my agentic roadmap. And this what, because first conversations also, Michael, is like, hey, I don't know what use case to start with.
Yeah, they don't know, right? Because like, where's the most efficiency going to be gained by doing this? Nobody knows for sure internally, right?
Yeah. So just, I mean, if I can do a small plug, we have
Please.
a tool called Architect where, like, imagine like Michael and his team put like 30 use cases in, and then it should give you a priority on, hey, this is how you should actually go after these use cases. Because we have seen that, hey, some takes 2 months, some takes 3 months, or you'll get a win here. This is the complexity of the use case. So I think they also need help on the roadmap. But yeah, I think a year. I think 2026, they should be self-sufficient, I think.
What's your sense, again, when you're dealing with some of these big enterprises, who's actually responsible for the activity of the agentic AI, right? And again, let me give you context from my side, the way I like to think about this. And I've had this discussion with a lot of people. Sometimes it feels to me like in these early stages, right? Again, without knowing necessarily like where the biggest efficiency gains are going to be, it's like having 5 or 10 new interns, right? Or 5 or 10 new college grad hires.
Right.
You give them all tasks to do, right? But at the end of the day, if they're humans, well, then if Bob messes something up or does something great, then Bob gets credit for it. If Lisa does something great or messes, you know what I mean? Like, you know where the credit lies and who's responsible. And as the manager, it kind of all filters up to you.
Yeah.
And can I just give you one more little bit of context? I sat on an automated trading desk, right, when I was at Goldman Sachs. So I was running algorithmic trading, and I was ultimately responsible for what that algo was doing. And if it went haywire, and some days it did weird things, at the end of the day, my boss was like, well, what's going on? Right? It was like they couldn't take the algo and put it into timeout. It was on me. But I'm curious, because this feels different to me. I don't know why. But what is your sense you're getting of like who ends up being responsible for this stuff?
It's a good point, because they have they usually go above and beyond. You give them a broad task. I think with tools and software so far, it's been like, it feels almost like hard-coded rules. You ask them for X and it gives you X, versus here it's like, hey, can you go do research, and then it does a bunch of these things. So I think, but there are three parts to this, Michael. So one is to make sure they don't mess up. I think a lot of it comes down to platforms to make sure there are guardrails. So that's one, onus is on us, right? The one that's providing us. And second, in terms of who's responsible, I think it'll come down to three people. There's let's say the head of AI/ML, there's the CIO, and then let's say there's like the chief CXO who's involved for that use case. For example, if I'm trying to automate sales, the head of revenue or the chief sales officer will have to be there. The CIO is making sure like all the data is secure and it's private, and then the head of AI/ML is kind of like owning the roadmap. So there will be these, I feel like, a combo of people coming together to do this. Like every time we talk to someone within a team, they always take us to the head of AI/ML.
They do. Do they really?
Yeah, they're like, hey, because they're like, hey, we don't know enough. I think you should talk to them. And then I think, when I say they don't know enough, I think I mean, they know a lot about the tools that are coming out, but in terms of how you have to go implement it within the company, I think the larger ones always take us to the head of AI/ML.
Yeah, and I think you've actually just validated this idea that I have, that it's like we're still in the early innings. And it's not that like the individuals that are doing these jobs and that are employing these this agentic AI don't want to take responsibility for it, because the infrastructure built around them isn't fully there yet. They're just like, you know what? Let's go up a level and let's have that decision get made at least together, so I'm not isolated alone, right? And I think that's normal, like I said, when all new technology gets rolled out, right? Like they just didn't, when you're going to laugh at this, but like when we did a wide area network at Morgan Stanley back in the 90s, like you couldn't just like randomly start sending files around the world. Do you know what I mean? Because it was too dangerous anyway. And I think that's going to be the same for everything else. Okay, before I let you go, where do you think this AI agent infrastructure is? We talked a little bit about how like people should be knowledgeable enough by the end of 2026 if their enterprises actually give them enough agency to do this, no pun intended. But where do you think this is going? What is it going to look like from an infrastructure standpoint and just kind of an overall standpoint 2-3 years out?
No, great question. So I think, Michael, I think it'll be a lot like programming languages, where you have specific programming languages that are better suited for specific tasks, and people have a comfort in building in that language. I think the same thing will come down to agent infra, where people, hardcore developers might be like, man, I really want to use LangChain. People like, let's say, low code developers might be like, I want to use Lyzr or the other platforms.
Yep.
So you'll end up having specialties, or each agent builder being equipped for building specific use cases. and they will all get to a place where they can speak to each other, and they should all be connected to each other. And it'll move further upstream in terms of everybody having the skill set to build agents. Like today, it still feels like it's for a small set of audience where, oh, developers are mostly doing this. Like Michael and I should be able to build audiences,
Sure.
taken 90% there, and then it's like the dev team is like, oh, thank you, I'm going to take this, do the last mile, take the agents to production. So I see that happening. I think, yeah, in terms of use cases, people will go further downstream in terms of complexity, and I guess there'll be more trust that'll be developed. Yeah, but what do you think? Where would this kind of go the next?
So
2 years?
I'm so glad you asked me, because again, I've seen so many of these tech cycles, right? And at the beginning, the people that are using the technology don't really have any idea like how powerful it is and what to do. And I think over time, you're right, over the next 2 to 3 years, I think two things are going to happen. One, the people that are comfortable using new technologies are going to be way better and way more powerful and way more enhanced in the things that they can and can't do, and they'll be way more productive. But I think the second thing that's going to happen is the type of people that get hired into specific jobs is going to change, and that those people are going to actually have more technical skills, if it hasn't happened already, so that they will, even if they don't know how to use agentic AI per se, they're technologically smart enough to understand how to build. Again, it's the same thing like you said with a computer programming language. If you're good at programming computers, you don't need to know the language, again, specifically before you start using it. And then once you start using it, you get way better at it. You understand all the semantics and all the stuff that's inside of it. You should be able to be just as good at that as you are at C or C++. So I think that's what's going to happen too. But I do think they're going to hire more technical people to come into those roles, because I think it's the only way you're going to be able to get the biggest productivity gains. And then what's going to happen is that guy or that gal is not going to have to go up to the head of AI and ML to make a decision about how to actually use it, because they're going to be empowered to be able to do this, because the trust is going to be there with them based on their technical skills. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and if I can just add one more thing, that
Please.
I think we will all have to be product managers.
Agreed.
Highly horizontal, but we understand an industry really well to have impact. We'll become reviewers more than actioners. Like this whole movement around humans being beta and agents being alpha. Like I feel like we'll essentially be the ones be like, okay, this sounds good. Like you're the one who's driving strategy. But yeah, I think I'm realizing like just knowing about building agents is not enough. Like which industry can I have more knowledge around to have impact? So I think people like you might actually see a big win. So yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, look, I'm going to let you go. Anirudh Narayan, co-founder and CTO at Lyzr.AI. Thank you so much for coming and doing this today. I really appreciate it. You have to come back. This was like one of the most substantive conversations I've had about agentic AI ever. I mean that. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Thanks,
you
man.
so much for having me. Yeah, take care.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to welcome Dennis Yap, the founder of AI Seer. That should be a great conversation as well. We will be right back. Okay, we're going to welcome Dennis Yap, the founder of AI Seer, onto the show. We're going to talk to Dennis about the truth verification and AI authentication, especially as AI-generated content becomes harder to distinguish. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about AI Seer, and then we'll jump right into it. How does that sound?
Great. So AI Seer originally started as a company called Reality Detector in 2019.
Got it.
And back then, even then, people were saying, hey, why do you want to create a truth or lie detector? Why don't you create a deepfake detector instead? Because even then, the demand for this deepfake detection is a lot greater than AI fact checker or AI lie detector. Yeah, so that's how the company began. Finally, I'm pleased to say that together with a partner, Numbers Protocol, we do have a solution for deepfakes, at least when it comes to photorealistic images, which is what most people are thinking about when you talk about the dangers of AI generation, I think.
Yeah, I mean, for someone like I am, right, who's so public and so like online, my voice, my image, all of these kinds of things about me. There's so much material to use to deepfake me. In a way, it's kind of scary. But let's talk about this. Where is this kind of enterprise truth verification headed, just as AI continues to become more and more prevalent?
Recently, we sold API to one of the big four consulting firms.
Mhm.
As you might know, one of them got into trouble for hallucinating some facts into their government reports and got fined
Oh, no.
hundreds of thousands of dollars in Australia, I believe. Uh, yeah, so where our AI fact checker can definitely come in is at the end, right? They have tons of other Gen AI tools creating their reports for them, but what a consulting firm might need is something to verify this huge volume of outputs before they send it to the client, right? And they get fined. And we've heard that lawyers, legal professors, all these kind of people have hallucinated cases in other high stakes situations, right? So that's where our AI fact checker definitely play a role.
So where does this sit inside like a typical enterprise, right? Let's say I'm a bank or I'm an insurance company or I'm some other like big institution, or let's say I'm using Salesforce or some big SaaS platform. Where is this verification going to sit, or is it something that everybody is going to need to do? And because it's kind of going to get a little bit meta in a way, right? In other words, I use AI to produce a report or to organize some information for me, and then I use another piece of AI to go out and say, is all this stuff that's in that report really true? Do you know what I mean? Like, how is that going to work logistically, and where's it going to sit?
So what we've seen is that our API comes in at the very end of the intended workflow. So they might have a lot of other AIs in the front part of the work generating the huge amount of text, and then ours can come in as the verification engine at the end. And of course, it can be more meta than that, right? Like if you are the client, if you are the person grading the reports,
Yeah, Dennis, your
you
connection's
could
really bad, man.
maybe I should try and switch to the 4G. I'm sorry. The 5G sometimes is a bit iffy.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm switching to the 4G. Give me
Yeah, there you
half
are.
a sec.
That sounds better.
Okay. Strangely enough, the 4G works better than the 5G.
That's weird. Okay,
Uh,
go ahead.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope everything is
You sound a lot clearer now.
okay now.
Go ahead. Yeah, why don't you start again?
Okay. Start from which part?
Just in
Where we were?
Yeah, where we were.
Okay. So of course it can sit at the very end of
Yep.
all these enterprise workflows. After all the AI generation has already happened, then you have AI fact checking at the end. Or it could also happen after its report has been published, right? For example, we have an export that has more than 9,000 followers now. If you tag it, it will fact check what is being spread on X, for example. Uh, so that's one way it could come in for the users. We also have a Chrome plugin that you can use to fact check what's being generated by Perplexity or ChatGPT on your desktop. So you could use it, say somebody generates, your content manager generates some text for you. Before you attach your name to it, you might just want to run it through our system, for example.
Yeah, it's so funny. I was reading something today, completely unrelated, and it said it was some famous quote from some famous person who said, "Idiots and fools are always the most self-confident that the things that they're saying and doing are 100% right, and that the wisest people are always a little bit unsure about whether what they're doing is proper." And I feel like we're kind of heading that way a little bit with artificial intelligence. But I'm wondering if the fact-checking, does it go to like different sources, or is it referencing the same information? Do you know what I mean? Like, how does that end up validating the stuff that's actually true, as opposed to just going back to the same place and doing the same type of hallucination per se?
So we are 3x less incorrect than Perplexity and 5x and 6x less incorrect than Grok and Gemini when it comes to new citations. This is because we have integrated with this NGO run by human beings, rated by human beings, 40 over of them. They rank different news sources and articles for quality and ideological bias. So we put this human inputs back into the loop in a way that other AI search systems don't. And that helps it from being recursive indefinitely.
Yeah, this is just another example of, technology is going to take away all of our jobs, and yet it's actually creating different types of jobs for people. And again, there may be a mismatch in timing. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier about this. There may be a mismatch in timing, but I think that over time, you are going to see new roles like this come where, yeah, if we're going to have to fact check this stuff at some point, a human's going to have to be in the loop and say, that's wrong, or that's right, or I can verify that this thing is actually true. Is it different, or is it more significant or more important inside of a regulated industry? Do you know what I mean? As opposed to a non-regulated one? Like, is this harder or more important to do inside of a bank or an insurance company than it would be, let's say, inside of a manufacturing company that doesn't have the same level of regulation and scrutiny?
Yeah, definitely. A lot of our initial users and enterprise clients who paid for pilots are from like high stakes industries like defense, consulting. Now they've realized it's a high stakes industry.
Well, it is if they're going to
too.
get fined, right? It's definitely high stakes.
Yeah, maybe in the past consultants have got away with too much
Maybe.
BS.
Go ahead. Okay.
And healthcare, yeah, healthcare is another industry where a lot of our users come from, especially if, healthcare is regulated if it's drugs and stuff like that. So people do care more about facts when it relates to human well-being and health.
Yeah, I mean, I would think so, and I would hope so. Okay, what does the future of trust look like in a world where content can be created or just like fabricated almost instantly? Like I've already mentioned, I worry about like my voice and my image because there's so much of it out there, and someone can probably take it and instantaneously run it through a whole bunch of stuff and just create stuff. What does trust look like, at least to you and to you guys from your perspective, when content can be created and fabricated so easily and so quickly?
Yeah, so we are working with Numbers Protocol. They let's say you snap a photo and upload it using their system. It will have the metadata. So if you're claiming to be from Iran or in the UAE and you're taking a photo of a burning building, for example,
Right.
It will encode the metadata so you can double check, hey, is this really shot at the UAE at this time or at this place? And then our AI fact checker can pull this data um, and use it as a source to debunk it or not debunk it, right? So it could be a photo of the building being on fire or not on fire at that point in time and the photo with the provenance with the blockchain info encoded on it will be the good source rather than the bad source.
Got it. I mean, you've heard this saying, right? Like the truth can get around the world a lot. I mean, a lie can get around the world a lot faster than the truth can catch up to it. So hopefully we can build some technology like what you're working with to make sure that all this stuff can get verified faster than that lie can get around the world. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Dennis, for coming on and for participating. I really appreciate your time today. Love to have you back on. Thank you again for doing this, man.
It's my pleasure, and I hope this is the first of many calls come.
Thank you. So I want to thank all of our guests today for coming on the show. Just a little bit of a summary of what we've done today. We spoke about why Southeast Asia's e-commerce war is becoming an AI war. We had Joel Lee, the CEO and founder of Protos Labs, on the show. Anirudh Narayan, a co-founder and the CGO at Lyzr.AI. And at the end, we had Dennis Yap, the founder of AI Seer, all talking about how artificial intelligence is going to get used in some different places. Again, thank you for watching the show today. Please subscribe to our channel. Please like these videos. It helps us. Please also follow us on X, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram. And we will be back with a new show soon. My name is Michael Waitz. Thank you again so much for doing this. Bye for now.